Having an active vocabulary can help you tremendously on all 4 sections of the IELTS exam. Let's take a look at some things you can do to build your vocabulary before you take the test. Let's start with some basic things. First of all, it's really important to be an active vocabulary learner. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that you are searching for new words all the time. Okay, so get away. If you're reading in English and you come across a new word and maybe you just skip over it, or maybe you quickly look up the new word on your phone and then don't really think about it again. That's what we're trying to get away from. You should be searching for new words and looking for new words that you can write down and collect. Okay, we're going to talk later in this lesson about keeping a vocabulary journal. Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. You should find some way where you are recording new words you don't understand, so that you can study them later. That's how you're going to learn. Also, if you're just using a dictionary, maybe on your phone, or maybe you have a book dictionary that you have, if you're only using the dictionary to learn new words, that's not enough. When you get a sense of a word, and maybe you've looked up the definition, you should always go back to the place you found that word and try to understand the sentence and the paragraph in which it exists, so that you get a full sense of its meaning. There are many, as I'm sure you're aware, there are many different meanings to most words in English, right? They can be used in multiple ways, in multiple contexts. They have different grammar features related to them, or different words that they are connected to in some way. It's important to learn words in context. And so that means that, okay, you've looked up a definition. Now take the time to go back to the place you found that word and really think about what it means in the context of what you're reading. Okay, so that's an important thing to do. Okay, now to your vocabulary journal. Your vocabulary journal is a critical piece, a very important piece of your vocabulary study. Let's talk about it a little bit. Your vocabulary journal is something you need to take with you all the time. Okay, as you're studying for the IELTS, your journal should be with you at all times. So you need to make sure it's something that's easy for you to carry around with you. Your phone, maybe you take your computer everywhere you go, or some students prefer to have a physical notebook where you write down with pencil and paper the words that are in there. Whatever it is you choose, whatever works for you, take it with you. Don't leave it at home in your bedroom collecting dust, okay? It needs to be with you, so that when you encounter new words throughout the course of the day in English, you have the opportunity to write them down and collect them. Now, your goal with your journal will be to review it daily, to do short review sessions, okay? You don't want to cram. As you're studying vocabulary, try to avoid the situation where you're sitting down for an hour or more and trying to memorize lots and lots of words in a very short amount of time. That actually doesn't work well for most people, okay? What's much better and what's much more effective is to take little short sessions every day. Maybe you've got a free 10 minutes or 15 minutes after dinner where you can look at your vocabulary list, you scan down through the words that you've collected, and over the course of days and weeks of keeping the journal, you're going to have maybe a few hundred words in there. You scan through the list and just spend a little extra time on the words that still look unfamiliar to you, that you haven't quite mastered yet. Look through the definition, look at the example sentence again, and then just keep going. You don't need to sit and memorize, painful memorization as you go. Over time, if you look at your vocabulary journal like this on a daily basis, you are going to find that you are learning those new words because you're looking at the definitions, you're looking at the meanings repeatedly and regularly as you study. Okay, that's the more effective way to use a journal and to learn new words over time. Okay, now a tip for how to collect vocabulary when you're reading. One frustration students often have is that when you're actively looking for vocab and you're keeping a vocabulary journal, is that when you read something, you're constantly having to start and stop your reading to enter new words into your journal, right? And when you do that, it's perfectly natural that you would kind of lose the meaning of the text that you are reading, okay? And I agree. When I'm reading in another language, and I have to stop all the time to sort of look up a new word and write it down, it is really hard to keep track of the overall meaning of what you're reading. So one piece of advice that can help with that is to look for vocabulary words before you actually go through and start reading a text. So that would look something like this. Here we've got a paragraph, okay? There are probably some new words in this paragraph for you. So before you actually go from beginning to end in reading this paragraph, you would go through and underline the new words. Go scan through the paragraph and underline words that are new that you have to look up, and actually look up those new words before you even start reading from top to bottom closely in this text. Doing that will hopefully make this paragraph easier to understand, and hopefully a lot less frustrating because you can avoid starting and stopping as you read. Okay, and that actually helps with reading generally, because you don't want to be starting and stopping all the time. You want to practice trying to read a document or whatever it is you're looking at from the beginning to the end without a lot of stops, because that's what makes a proficient reader. Okay, so this is a great practice to get into as you're collecting vocabulary, is to look for those new words before you read, and then go and read the paragraph that you're looking at. Okay, so some more specific directions about keeping a vocab journal. What you're shooting for, your goal should be about 10 to 15 new words every day in English, okay? So adding that number of words will be an appropriate amount. Research shows that that's about the amount that most people can learn in one day. Okay, so if you're collecting 50 to 100 words, it's very unlikely that you're going to learn all of those. But 10 to 15 words a day is a realistic goal of new words that you can learn. So here's what each entry in your journal should include. Now, students have lots of different ways they like to keep journals and different things they like to do. And I think if you found something that works for you, great. Keep going with it. But here are some minimum things that I always suggest to my students that they should keep in their journal. Of course, you keep the word. You write down the word and a simple definition in English. Okay, you can just put a synonym there if you like, okay, but something simple. Don't write out a long paragraph definition there. Try to keep it as simple as you can. Even just understanding and getting the gist of a word, okay, the basic meaning of it, because you have a good synonym or you have a very short phrase or sentence to help you remember the meaning, that's good enough, okay, for your vocabulary journal. Then I always recommend that students write a sample sentence, okay? It doesn't need to be a long or complicated sentence. A short sentence is fine. But here's the thing that I think is really most effective, that your sample sentence, if at all possible, should have some connection, some real or memorable connection to you, if possible. So write about yourself, write about some situation you had, and try to use that word and connect it to something memorable for you. Okay, that personal connection with the word, that real thing that you remember or that you think about from your life, will be easier to remember and easier for you to associate with that word when you see it later, when you see it in 2 months, or when you see it on the IELTS exam. It's more likely, if you make a personal connection to that word, that you're going to remember what it is. Okay, let's take a look at a sample entry, actually 2 entries here into the kind of vocabulary journal I'm describing, looking at how I recommend that you organize the information there. Okay, so we've got 2 words here, assume and confection. I like to add as an addition sort of the part of speech. It's a verb here. Confection is a noun. That helps to think about the grammar a little bit of these words and just to keep that straight. But we've got our simple definitions, right? So the simple definition of assume is that you believe something to be true, but without proof. Okay, so you're making assumption about something is really a belief that you have no evidence or at least not incomplete evidence to support that idea. Okay, so a confection then, very simply, is a sweet food. Now, the sample sentences, we're using our imagination here a little bit, but the important thing, so the sample sentence for assume, I'm imagining a student wrote this who actually had a biology quiz recently and who actually got a bad grade. Okay, this isn't me. I haven't had a biology quiz in a long time, but we're imagining this is a real situation because our sample sentence says, I assumed the biology quiz would be easy, but it was actually very difficult and I got a bad grade. Okay, so this person who entered this sample sentence, this was a real situation for them. Remember, we're trying to think of sample sentences that use the word and make a personal connection to the word. So this person who entered this had that actual situation occur and hopefully will remember the word assume better because they've connected to that real situation. All right, the confection one, a bakery in my neighborhood is famous for its confections. Okay, so here, this person is thinking about a real place in their neighborhood, and they're putting that word confection in there and associating that word with the real place in their neighborhood for their sample sentence. That's what I suggest that you do as you try to write sample sentences for your words. It's hard. Some words are hard to make a personal connection with. It's okay if you can't think of something immediately, but it can really help to remember those words. So let's review. So your goal for vocabulary is to be an active vocabulary learner. No more passive vocabulary learning. No more just looking up a word and then never thinking about it again. You are going to actively look for new words and you're going to write them down in your journal. 10 to 15 new words is your goal, and you're going to keep those words in your journal that you review every single day, hopefully. Okay, that's the goal. And you don't want to review it for hours and hours. You want to review it in very short 10, 15-minute periods. Maybe you can do that 2 or 3 times during the day where you just scan through your new words, stopping, pausing on words that are still unfamiliar to you, spending a moment reading your definition, your sample sentence there, and then you move on, okay? You scan like that through your list on a daily basis. Even as you're collecting a few hundred words, you're kind of touching the word. You're getting back to the words little by little every day, and those repetitions are what get those words deeply ingrained into your mind, okay? So, if you follow some of these strategies here, hopefully you can really build a very strong vocabulary before you take the IELTS exam, which will help you tremendously on all 4 sections of the test.